What's your name and where are you from?
My name's Harlan Pease. I'm from Thomaston, Maine. It's a little town on the coast of Maine.
Why did you feel a need to move to Nashville?
I felt the need to move to Nashville because I got into writing songs and I had no outlet for the songs. I'd go out, at the time I was living on Cape Cod. I moved here from Cape Cod. Yeah. I felt the need to move to Nashville because I was writing songs and I didn't really have an outlet for them. And I also didn't have much of a scene to interact with. So I was writing songs, but I didn't know if they were really good or not. So I visited Nashville. I'd lived here before. I'd gone on the road and played guitar with some bands and done that kind of thing. And so I come down to Nashville and play a writer's night, you know, hit an open mic and really just get my butt kicked. And I'd be inspired to go back home and write some more songs. Then I'd come back down and get my butt kicked. And make a long story short, it just made more sense to move here and get my butt kicked every day. It costs a lot less money in gas. And I guess to dig a little deeper into that, I felt like I'd done a lot of stuff with music and I was pleased with what I'd done with music. I'd done some recording, I'd done some gigging, I'd toured, played big stages, small stages. And there was this one last thing, which is to be more creative on that end of it. So that was kind of driving the whole bus.
Tell me about some of the things that you left behind or sacrifices you made to move to Nashville.
And some days it feels like I sacrificed a whole lot. I had a great job. I was teaching at a fantastic high school. It's rated in the top 20 schools in the country. I took a leave of absence. They extended it a year and then another year. And then eventually, of course, they had to fill my position. I had some great friends back home. Cape Cod, I'd been there for 12 years and it really felt like home. I had a musical family. I had a teaching family. I was dating a beautiful girl and you know, we kept it going kind of long distance for a couple of years, but on a bad day when it feels like I gave up my whole life. And on a good day, it feels like I found a home. So, a little bit of both.
When you got to Nashville to further your music career and all that, what's the first thing you did when you got here?
The first thing I did when I got to Nashville was I wrote every single day, all day, it seemed like. I had no job. I had some money in the bank. So I was thinking I was going to live on my savings and I was going to make it as a songwriter before my money ran out, which was not going to happen at all. So I had this kind of horrible apartment. I had a drummer living downstairs. So I was dealing with a symphony of drums at intermittent times throughout the day. But when that wasn't going on, I was writing songs. And started networking a little bit. I was going out to the writers' nights. I had an experience, it's kind of extending. I've been here a month and I met Gary Hannon, who has written a couple #1 songs, great songwriter, and he took me under his wing a little bit. And at the time he had just written the song Tequila Makes Your Clothes Fall Off, the Joe Nichols song. And so he was drinking Patron and he was buying me shots of Patron and we're hanging out. And I was thinking, I'm in the lap of, you know, I've made it. And then I kind of really learned the hard way, like when someone says, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. That's kind of a way of saying goodbye in most cases, a very polite way, and nothing against Gary, but so that's a little bit of a long-winded way to tell you what happened like when I first got to Nashville, but I was 100% focused on writing. And then I got a job. So that changed things a bit.
Have you found what you expected you would find when you got to Nashville? Or is it totally different?
When I got to Nashville, my expectations were that the situation was going to be a little more open. When I'd lived in Nashville before as a guitarist, it was not unusual to go out to a jam and see like George Strait's drummer, Jeff Garris, who was playing guitar with John Michael Montgomery at the time, and he'd come out and hang out at jams. So it was a lot more rubbing elbows with people who were you know, doing what I wanted to do. It was easier to make connections. In fact, I met this guy, Dan Schaefer, who played for Barbara Mandrell. He played for Lori Morgan, and then he was playing Shania Twain's TV appearances. You know, he's just hanging out at some bar and playing guitar on his off nights. The songwriting community is very open. It seems like to a point. And then when you approach that inner circle, it's not hard to come up and say hello to these people, but it's a little more closed off than the guitar playing community was. So that was an expectation that I had that was not fulfilled. And it's still something I think everybody probably kind of struggles with figuring out, is how to get into that inner circle. I guess probably in studio musicians it's kind of the same thing. There's probably a difference between road musicians and those A-level studio players. And it makes perfect sense from a business perspective. There is only so much money to go around. There are only so many major albums that are getting cut. So Brent Mason, who's probably not cutting as much as he used to, he really has no incentive to bring someone else in and compete in his home. So that part of it I didn't expect. I was a little bit idealistic in terms of what I thought it was going to be like.
How does the music scene in Nashville compare to the music scene from where you're from?
Big learning. Let me restart that. The major thing I learned when I got to Nashville in terms of music was I wasn't going to make any money. I was very spoiled back on Cape Cod. I was gigging 3 or 4 times a week, making a minimum of $100, doing gigs from 6 to 9 out by pools, you know, playing for people sunbathing and playing Jimmy Buffett music. Came to Nashville, I joined a band. We're driving down to Manchester and, you know, getting paid $50, and after I put gas in my vehicle, I'd gone in the hole to play a gig. That part of it was very different. The benefit of being here is a lot of the people I played music with back in Cape Cod, it was a side gig. They did it to make some extra money. They went home to their wives, their kids, their families. And there weren't a lot of people who were single and focused on music. So moving here, suddenly you join a family where you're not at all different. Most people are like you. They're here for some burning desire to play music. So I sacrificed some cash and stability for more of a family, organic type of feel here in Nashville.
What are some of the main things that you really like after making your move to Nashville? What's some of the things that you really like about being here?
There's a whole lot to love about Nashville. The community feeling is great. If I'm having a less than stellar day, and it doesn't necessarily have to be music related, it can be personal or work related, I can go up to the Commodore and there are friendly faces, there are people that are happy to see me. And it's not like you have to maintain a tight friendship with these people. They're just people that generally you can share some words, have a drink with, hang out. And I've had some dreams I didn't know I had come true since I moved to Nashville. Sharing the stage with Dickie Lee. I mean, Dickie wrote She Thinks I Still Care, wrote The Keeper of the Stars. Dickie was the first guy who introduced me to a publisher down here, and you have to kind of like pinch yourself, like, this is Dickie Lee, and he's taken an interest in my music, and I'm sharing the stage with him, and that's just not going to happen back in Cape Cod or Maine. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that, or you can't, or value. I mean, that is a better way to look at it. And another great thing about living in Nashville is, as a community, I always tell this story. When I moved here and went and opened a bank account, they were so nice. I thought they wanted something from me. You know, I thought they had, what's your angle? What's your edge here? And people are genuinely outgoing and friendly, and they seem interested in people. And it's not to say that people in New England don't do that, but I think they're a little more standoffish up front. And here in Tennessee, it's just a little easier to say hello and make an acquaintance with someone. The people here are great. It really is. It's not as cold. I'll take that too. I miss snow, but I don't miss the cold.
Well, besides Nashville being a mecca for music, is there anything else that you found since you've been to Nashville to be very appealing or interesting about the city that's not so much music, but other things?
Nashville as a city is fantastic. I lived in Boston. Nashville maintains a small town feel. A traffic jam in Nashville is nothing to be concerned about. That may seem like a minor detail, but if you've lived in Boston and you have to schedule your life around traffic, it's huge. The Nashville Public Library system seems like an odd thing to think about, but it's amazing. It is so much better than what you deal with in Boston or anywhere else I've been. Nashville spends money on culture, and it's accessible. You don't have to have a lot of money to go experience, whether it be the Parthenon, go to the library, or go downtown and hear world-class musicians for the price of a beer. Which gets it back to, the music thing, but above and beyond the music, it's an incredibly cosmopolitan city. My nephew was having some issues. He's kind of a little different, and I was like, why don't you move to Nashville? Because you can certainly find people that you know, but you're not moving into a city. I mean, he's small town like I'm small town. There's a place you can come and experience a breadth of ideas about life, but you still can feel kind of like you're in your home neighborhood. It truly is a cool city. It offers a lot.
What would you tell other people who are thinking about moving to Nashville? What should they think about before they come down here?
If someone asked me if they should move to Nashville, I guess my first question would be, do you want to live in Nashville? I would guess to come here with just music, but really not like it for a variety of reasons, probably going to lead to disappointment because it takes time to dig in. Very few people are overnight successes. But if the idea of the community appeals to you, then it's worth doing. And I would recommend, if you can take a leave of absence like I did and come here for a year or 6 months and see if you like the community, then make that decision. If I hadn't liked living in Nashville, I would have left. And it's not because I don't love music, but it can be disappointing. Which would lead to the next thing, is to have realistic expectations. Nashville's going to make you find out how bad you want it. It's not going to, with exceptions, but most of us don't end up with something dropped into our lap. You're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to carve out your own little space. And there's a whole lot going on here that can lead you astray. So I would say at base level, make sure you want to live here. Don't come here if you hate the South or you hate Tennessee or whatever it is you don't like. But if you like living here and the music works for you, manage your expectations. There are very few people I would say don't come here, if those two things are in order. I don't know if I have anything else on it.
Are you happy you moved here?
I'm very happy I moved here. I can't emphasize enough that the days that my life is a blessing here. Some of it has nothing to do with music. I bought a house recently. I have a nice little neighborhood house in a little development, and I never thought I'd like it, that kind of living. I grew up kind of a lot of land, a lot of space, the water's right there. But it fits. I have a short little commute to my job. I have a short little commute to Music Row. I found a life here. Like I said, I think I said something earlier about have dreams come true that you didn't know that you have. The people are really overall fantastic. They're genuine. So, yeah, overall my happiness level is higher here. And the other part of it, that this is kind of intangible because it's hard to nail down a value on that. But there were things I could have pursued back home I had a teaching job. I loved teaching. I was moving up in my career. Without going into a bunch of details, I was at an IB school, and I was moving up in the IB organization as well as in my school itself. But it wasn't where my heart was. It was something I knew I was good at, but it wasn't what I wanted to be good at. So the other part of it is, no matter how disappointed or frustrated I get, I count my blessings every day that I just made a decision in my life to do something I really wanted to do. And I'd rather fail at trying than, to use a cliche, fail to try. Fail at trying than fail to try. I didn't say it quite right, but that's the idea.
Do you have any regrets about living here?
I have regrets on bad days. I have regrets because this time of year, and here it is, it's November, back home in Maine, snow's on the ground, we're going out deer hunting, you're going to go ice fishing in a month, you know. I regret not having access to that part of my life. And it wasn't even like it was a huge part of my life, but it was just a seasonal thing that happens. I regret giving up a huge part of my tradition. The other regret I have with Nashville, or moving to Nashville, is that I didn't do it in a more organized fashion. And that has nothing to do with the regret of moving here. But given the situation I was in before, if I had taken care of my resources, I could have moved here for the summer and then gone back home and done my school teaching. And then I could have slowly kind of developed my way into Nashville in a little more organized fashion, instead of showing up like bag and baggage and some money and be like, here I am, with no real plan.
Let's talk about some of the successes you had. What are some of the things that you've done since you've been to Nashville that made you feel like you've achieved some successes in your life?
I've had a few successes with some independent cuts. The first one was with a girl, Allison Joy Williams. It was a song we wrote. She put it out. It got some airplay in Europe. It's a blues song. And then I wrote a song with Brianna Tyson, which she put on her EP, and she was opening up a bunch of shows for Vince Gill. So the song was getting out there a little bit. And then recently, a fellow named Jason Bradley, who was a South African artist, recorded a song that Jeremy Dean and I wrote. And Gary Hannon, who was one of the first people I met when I got to town, he's had some number ones. He has some cuts on that album, so it kind of creates this little bit of like making baby steps towards like, well, I'm on a song that got some radio play. Now I'm on an album with some other hit songwriter. So that forward progression has always felt great. Some of the other successes are intangible. One thing that I had to come to grips with as a songwriter here in Nashville is there are songs I'm going to write that are songs from me. And there are songs that I'm going to write that are songs that I'm thinking more of like commercial potential. And the songs that I write from me, some of them I never play out at Writers' Night or anything, but to come here and think about the songs I was writing when I moved here 5 years ago, and then the songs that I'm writing now, that's just a great feeling. There's the feeling that comes with writing a song and knowing you express that emotion, and it doesn't matter if someone doesn't hear it. That philosophical question of if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? I think it does, because I don't need someone else to hear it when I know that I nailed it. And some of the songs, I mean, maybe I'll play a song for my girlfriend and she's the only audience. I discovered Walt Wilkins, and Walt's a guy who just kind of writes it from his heart. And I saw him at the Bluebird, and it was just an incredibly inspiring show, because he's had some commercial success, but he sang the songs, it was very evident, that were meaningful to him at that moment. So that kind of success is intangible. You can't put a number on it. There's no dollar value. But to have attempted something I wanted to do and to achieve some success with it in my own mind, that pays off hugely for me.
Tell me about your impressions of the songwriter community. I know there's hundreds of you guys who hang out together and you go to different places. Tell me about your impressions of the Nashville songwriter community.
The Nashville songwriter community is like any other community. We're maybe a little weirder, but it's the same as any other community. There are people who are motivated by greed. There are people who are motivated by art, and there are probably most of us who are somewhere in between that kind of, you know, somewhere in between. Maybe greed's not the right word. Commerce makes it sound a little, but you have the same personality types. You have aggressive people, you have passive people, you have annoying people, you have, you know, just the sweetest people you're ever going to meet. Having said that, I would say that the songwriting community is a little more sensitive. And I almost checked myself on saying that because I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it's that they're more sensitive. I think they wear it on their sleeve a little more. So if someone asks you to co-write and you just don't really want to co-write with that person, it's not like it's just a business decision. We're not going to merge these two companies. It's like personal rejection because we're so tied into what we do. And that can make it difficult to manage. And it obviously goes both ways. A good friend of mine, Jamie Prosser, she said something like, there's not a songwriter alive in Nashville that doesn't have a list of people that they can't wait to, you know, like be like, well, look, I made it now. Kind of shove that back in someone's face because on the way you're going to meet these people and you take it personally. So it can make for some interesting emotions and some funny stories. And that way I'm glad I'm not 18 years old and here and on Facebook and putting out all my feelings. I'm glad I have some seasoning and I know, take it with a grain of salt, the sun's going to come up tomorrow.
If you had a time machine and you could do this over, would you do it? Would you still have moved to Nashville? Or would you stayed with Boston and your school and all that?
If I had a time machine, I'd definitely go back and do it over. I'd try to do a few things more smartly, but I would definitely go back. If anything, I'd gone back and done it before. I'd have gone back and done it 10 to 15 years earlier in my life. That's for sure. In the big picture, no regrets. It was absolutely the right decision for me as a person. I can't imagine being back home now. And I mean, I know I'd have happiness hanging out with my friends and doing the things we did. I mean, I'd probably be married to that girl that I was with and still teaching school and maybe have a family, and that would be a wonderful thing. And it may seem like a huge price to pay for the opportunity to write a few songs, but yeah, I'd go back in a heartbeat if I had a time machine to do it all over.
Good answer. What's the best or the coolest thing about being a songwriter?
The coolest thing about being a songwriter is when you write a song and you get an emotional response from the crowd. If you go out to a writer's night, you hear a lot of people play, and it's kind of like assembly line. This guy plays, this guy plays, this guy plays. And people get jaded in the audience, and they're talking. So when you're up there playing, you start a song, and suddenly you hear that, like, it gets silent. That's a buzz that you know you did something right. So there's that external validation, and that just is incredibly cool. And then sometimes you have those moments where someone comes up, and I had this fella come up. I had written a couple songs. I don't even remember them now, but I was reflecting on this breakup that I'd gone through with this girl I was dating when I first moved here. And he'd gone through a divorce. And he came up, and it was at the Commodore, and you come off the stage at the Commodore, there's this little back section where all the guitar cases, and he was in tears. And I mean, I didn't even know how to respond to that. That was just huge that he had been moved so much by that song. And that's the external validation that you get, that I think everybody needs that, obviously. Songwriters in particular probably need it more. There's something sick inside us that drives us to go out and lay it out on the stage for everyone to see. So when you get that validation, it feels, it's higher than high. I mean, that's as good as it gets. But the best part of it, before I moved here and I was trying to write songs, I have a feeling or something I want to express, and I wasn't quite getting it. And there's a frustration that goes with that. So by coming here and hammering it out and writing and writing and writing, you learn how to form your thoughts in a way that, so there's that sense of release that comes with it too. And I mean, those are the songs you write for yourself, and there's songs you write for other people. And they both have huge, huge benefits.
Is there anything that I have not covered about songwriting here in Nashville, or any interesting stories you might have things that I haven't covered? Anything in your mind you'd like to tell somebody who might be thinking about moving down here?
If someone was moving to Nashville and asked me for advice, I would share some advice that I received, and there's a funny story that goes along with this. I went to this thing, I won't name what it was, but it was this little gathering of songwriters. It was kind of a money-making thing. And there was a song plugger, who was a featured speaker. And there were a couple people there who were being pushy, for lack of a better. And they were trying to push their CD into this guy's hand. And he said, you know, if I moved to Nashville, I wouldn't ask anybody for anything for a year. I would just show up, let people see me, be supportive of other artists, let them know you're here in the landscape, you mean to be a part of it, and you're serious about your art. And the guy responded with like, yeah, that's good, but would you like to take a copy of my CD? And it's such a small community, you don't have many chances to make a first impression, because people will get the word out and they're going to remember what you look like, and then suddenly, you know, this person somewhere, oh, I didn't realize you're friends with this person, and that, it's a small community, and you do have one chance to make a first impression. Having said that, I've been a little bit passive. I should have been a little more aggressive in a couple situations in terms of utilizing some contacts and connections, but for me personally, it made sense to err on the side of caution, given where I am in my life and what I'm trying to accomplish. But as a general rule, it's going to take some time. It's a small community. Most of the people that write songs are kind of laid back, cool people, and they're not that's why they're not business types. That's not why they're wearing that's why they're not wearing a suit. So you have to be cognizant of that. The music business is a business, but most people don't wear it on their sleeve that they're business people. They're musicians first. Let someone else make those decisions. You just do your best and be cool. The other thing I would say is to stay off Facebook. And the thing about Facebook is that it's a chance for people to self-promote, and you can get yourself down if you're out there on Facebook and you see these people and they're writing like, posting like, yeah, I just wrote a smash with so-and-so, just wrote a smash with so-and-so, and it takes you a while to figure out where are all those smash songs you're writing. But it can get you down if you're in a place where you're like, if you feel like, what am I doing wrong, or why isn't this working for me? Is to recognize you have to trust your own path. If you believe in your music, you believe in your songs, get it to the people who can actually do something. You can tread a lot of water in Nashville, staying in a group of people, and you might have to step on a few toes to move above that. But stay off Facebook. Chris Wallen, who's a great songwriter, put something on Facebook one day which said, and I'm paraphrasing, you know who doesn't say they just wrote a hit song? Hit songwriters. And I've kind of always taken that to heart, because it's very true, very true.
I know you just got through saying for songwriters to stay off Facebook, but can you think of a way that songwriters can use social networking to help their careers?
I think if someone is savvy with social media, it can be beneficial for whatever you're trying to accomplish, whether you're a songwriter or starting a business. I think the problem is a lot of people aren't savvy with social media. I post on Facebook almost every day. I try to post something that's non-political, non-negative, something funny, or if I'm doing something music related, I'll promote that. But the face I try to present on Facebook is, you know, humorous, fun, whatever, not entirely serious. So in that way, certainly, you can brand yourself, you can create your image. I can think of a couple examples of songwriters, more than a couple, who go out on Facebook and they engage in political debates and they express opinions, and, you know, it doesn't even have to be politics, but I have sat there myself and thought, wow, I would not want to be stuck in a writing room with this person for 3 hours if they started pontificating on their feelings about Obamacare. I'm not educated enough to have a thought about it. And I don't want to have a one-sided conversation with someone who's telling me what I ought to think. So there's the danger in it, but I think if someone uses it wisely, and the key is to be savvy. I think over and over again, I'm glad Facebook didn't exist when I was 16 years old and some girl rejected me and I got on Facebook and made a fool of myself, or maybe had a couple beers and God only knows what I posted. And it seems like a lot of people don't quite know how to filter. So it can be valuable, but you have to recognize that you are presenting your image. This is your face. If you want to have a personal rant, have a personal Facebook.
Thanks, Harlan.
My pleasure. Thanks, Steve. This is the first song in my Freudian trilogy. Whoa, whoa, ego. Got yourself a black and blue. Ego. She wouldn't put up with you. She tried to say that she was gonna leave, but you wouldn't take her seriously. And now you got yourself a bruise. Well, she wouldn't put up with you. Whoa, whoa, ego. Try not to act surprised. You could always rationalize and tell yourself she wasn't that great, you were gonna leave her anyway. But you know that that's not true, or she wouldn't put up with you. Oh, how I wish it was you telling me goodbye. For all I care, you can take a big chunk of my pride. Oh, ego. What you gonna tell your friends? Ego. I know you blew it again. You had someone that was really nice, but you wouldn't make a sacrifice. And now you got yourself a bruise, but she wouldn't put up with you. How I wish it was you telling me goodbye. For all I care, you can take a big chunk of my pride. Oh, ego. What you gonna tell your friends? Ego. I know you blew it again. You had someone that was really nice, but you wouldn't make a sacrifice. And now you got yourself a bruise, but she wouldn't put up with you. Now you got yourself a bruise, she wouldn't put up with you.